LED floodlights are very popular on eBay at the moment. They're cheap and they seem to be quite bright. And they certainly do save a lot of energy. So let's plug this one in and just see how bright it is. Oh, that's pretty good. Looks okay. The sensor works okay. But is it 20 watt? Well, let's bring in a power meter here and we'll plug it into the power meter. And the power meter says the 20 watt light is drawing 13 watts. And I know that the passive infrared sensor here uses one of those watts. So the actual power of the LED is 12 watts. And you know what? I got lucky because many of these are actually just putting out 10 watts to the 20 watt LED. And I'm not sure why. They're just using a 10 watt driver for a 20 watt LED. And the same applies to the smaller fixtures like this 10 watt one, which is actually using a 3 watt driver. The LED, the whole fixture actually draws about 4 watts, but that's nowhere near 10 watts. That's not even half the rating that you're paying for. I'm not sure if this is an economy measure or it's because they're overheating and it's, goodness knows, I'm guessing it's just to save money. Now, that's just the start of this story. I'm going to disconnect this now from my little test setup, which is completely non-compliant. I would have put a plug in this, but it's not very long lead, and also you may have to cut the end off because this one came stripped with such zealousness that it's through to the copper on every single wire where they've cut it. Now, let's look at the earth. So I've got a meter here, and we'll check earth continuity to the case. This is a simple continuity test here. And I'm going to be testing from the earth wire onto any metal, exposed metal that's not covered in paint. So it's the screws I'm going to test onto. So here's the earth wire and the flex. Nothing. No earth continuity at all. So let's open it up and take a look inside. The cover comes off with 4 screws. This short flex is annoying. It means that theoretically you have to try and put it into a junction box very close, but in reality it's not going to even reach. Once you get that bracket on a wall, the flex isn't going to reach anything. So that's going to result in people making pudding joints, which isn't a good result, or having floating junction boxes. So that's the 4 screws out. The cover lifts off, this little frame, and then the glass is stuck to silicon and will just lift off. It may stick to the silicon a bit, but it comes off. Watch out for broken glass shards on the corners where they've chopped it. This starts off as a rectangular piece of glass and then they sort of smash off the corners, and sometimes they're a wee bit rough with them. So inside we have the LED, a reflector and a ballast. So let's take the reflector off. This is usually held on by a screw at each corner, diagonally opposing corners, but I see they've got 3 screws in this one. This must be the luxury model. The reflector comes off to reveal the LED and a floating earth wire not connected to anything. Sometimes they even just crop it off, or sometimes they actually hide it by gluing it out the way. Sometimes it's even got a little spade crimp in it, a ring crimp, but still not connected to anything. I am not sure why they do this. It's really common in these floodlights. They just leave the earth floating. This is an aluminium case. It's conductive. It's a mains voltage light. It should be grounded. If you decide to ground one yourself, then you can put a ring crimp on it and sort of maybe clean up one of these pillars, make sure you're getting a good connection, and sandwich it between the reflector But I just don't know why they just leave these disconnected. It's really common. The LED is held on by two diagonally opposing screws, and there should be heatsink compound behind it. There is heatsink compound. I can see it squishing out the sides. That's a good result. Some of them, they don't put much heatsink compound, some of them they put none. Here's the little ballast. It's the culprit here because this should be a big ballast. This should be a 20 watt power supply, and oh, it's not even stuck down. Well, they've tried sticking it down, but it's obviously come off. This, as I say, should be 20 watt, but it's a 10 watt supply, and I just don't know why they're doing this. The first LED lights like this came out with proper ballasts, proper power supplies, but they don't have them now. They seem to be, a lot of them seem to be coming out with these half rating supplies. I'm not sure if it's a thermal issue, because maybe they weren't dissipating enough heat from the back, or maybe the supplies were overheating inside the case. Yeah, so just keep this in mind if you buy these, that if you go for a 20 watt, you may not get a 20 watt, you may get a 10 watt. If you go for a 10 watt, you may get a 4 watt or less. And they almost certainly seem to just come with the earth disconnected. So just know what you're buying.